بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبا القاسم مصطفى محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. وأما بعد، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله. Welcome to another one of our English Friday night programs with His Eminence Sheikh Hamid Waqar, who will be taking the discussion by himself tonight. So it won't be a panel like it has been in the past few weeks. And also, due to time restrictions, Ziyarat Al Yasin won't be performed tonight, unfortunately. Inshallah, from next week, we are aiming to perform the Ziyarat before Salah. So for those who are interested, please be aware of that. To begin tonight's program, I'd like to call upon Brother Sayyid Taha Musawi to enlighten our hearts with verses of the Holy Quran. Please welcome him with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. كلا إن كتاب الأبرار لفي عليين وما أدراك ما عليون.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله. You keep going.
كتاب مرقوم يشهده المقربون. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. كلا إن كتاب الأبرار لفي عليين. وما أدراك ما عليون. كتاب مرقوم يشهده المقربون. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما قدمت لغد. اتقوا الله ولتنظر نفس ما هم الفاسقون لا يستوي أصحاب النار وأصحاب الجنة أصحاب الجنة هم الفائزون لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون والله الذي لا إله إلا هو عالم الغيب والشهادة هو الرحمن الرحيم هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون والله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن العزيز الجبار المتكبر سبحان الله عما يشركون والله الخالق البارئ المصور له الأسماء الحسنى له الأسماء الحسنى يسبح له ما في السماوات والأرض وهو العزيز الحكيم صدق الله العلي العظيم.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Thank you very much, Brother Taha, for that beautiful recitation, and also well done on the improvisation, having to change surah in the middle. We had a different PowerPoint ready. Thanks again. May Allah bless you both in this life and the next, inshallah. Please recite aloud salawat for his well-being.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Without any further ado, we'll move on to the main topic of tonight's, to the main part of tonight's program. which will be a discussion with His Eminence Sheikh Hamad Waqar on the topic of Husn Zan. And the question for tonight is, does Islam encourage optimism? Please welcome His Eminence Sheikh Hamad Waqar with 3 of your loudest salawats ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبا القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Alhamdulillah, it's always honor and a privilege to be here amongst you participating in your programs. I was looking at various topics and I came across an interesting article about Husn Zan. Now Husn Zan, it's a positive ethical trait, right? I guess it could be translated as into optimism. It's thinking positively about others. So it's either about God, Allah, it could be about the world, the universe, it could be about other people, right? But it's having this positive outlook about other people. Okay? So in English, I understand that it's optimism. Now, it's the opposite to su'zan, which is like having a pessimistic viewpoint about others. So it's thinking negatively about other people, thinking negatively about God, thinking negatively about the world, the universe, right? So these two are kind of mentioned in many traditions as opposites to one another, obviously. Now, when you look at the traditions for Husn Zan, you see that there's, half of the traditions are about su'zan, not even about Husn Zan. So they lump them all together. But I only wanted to talk about, Husn Zan or optimism. And at the end, we'll look about how to try to become optimistic by examining su'zan or pessimism, right? Now, I want to start by presenting an example from the Quran, read a few ahadith, and then talk about a little bit of the details, okay? So the Quranic example, and this is just one example, is in Surah Nur. And it's an interesting story. So the one part of the verse that I'll read, لولا إذ سمعتم ظن المؤمنون والمؤمنات بأنفسهم خيرا. When you first heard about it, why did not the faithful men and the faithful women think well of their folks or their people? Right? Why not? Now, what is this story? So this story, if you go into the tafsir, they say that this is a story called Ik, the story of Ik, the story of Ifk. And with this story, Sunni commentators of the Quran say it's about Aisha, and some Shia commentators of the Quran say it's about Maryam al-Qibtiyya. And when you look at Allama Tabatabai, he pretty much states that it's possible that it's one of these, but both of them have holes in the story, right? So it's probable that it was some other story that we don't even know about. But what we do know is that a person from amongst the Prophet's family was accused of being an adulteress, right? So whoever that person was, it's not very clear, but someone in the Prophet's family was accused of this. And then the rumors spread all throughout the society. And the munafiqeen, the hypocrites, took advantage and enjoyed spreading these negative rumors about one of the women of the Prophet's family, whoever she was. All right? And this is pretty common, even in our community in this age, that gossip goes around the community very fast, right? When a certain person does something really bad, everyone talks about it. Everyone talks about it very, very quickly, and everyone enjoys talking about it, to the extent that maybe even the people who are hearing it don't even stop to think, is this true or not? Did this actually happen or not? They just hear it, and then they can't wait to go tell their circle. Right? So no one's investigating, no one's trying to figure out if it's true or not, everyone's just gossiping. And it seems like in this instance, this is what happened. So one of the family members of the Prophet was accused of adulteress. She wasn't an adulteress, like she didn't commit this sin, but she was accused of it, and then it spread. And this verse is rebuking those, right, who did not dismiss the story outright. Right? It's saying when you first heard about it, why didn't you think well of your folk? And it says your people as the Prophet's family is your family as well. It's like, why didn't you immediately think well about them and dismiss it? Why did you even entertain this? Right? So it's pointing to this husn zan, this positive outlook that we should have on others. It's important, right? Now, let's look at some hadith, and from these hadith we could see the importance of this, of thinking positively about others, right? So one hadith from Imam Ali alayhi salam, husn dhan rahatul qalb wa salamatul badan. Right? So this optimism or thinking well of others first gives this comfort or tranquility to your heart, and second gives health to your body. So it causes physical health. It's interesting, right? That's huge. Imam Ali alayhi salam again, he said, husnu zan an tukhlis al-amal wa tarju min Allah an ya'fu an al-zalal. So this one states that optimism, or this positive outlook on others, right, will help you to purify your actions or your worship of God, and will make you to have hope in Allah to forgive your mistakes, to forgive your faults. Right? So this is also good. It looks like it points to aspects of spirituality here as well. One from our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, husnu dhan billah min ibadatillah. So thinking positively about Allah is an act of worship. Right? So it's a form of worshiping God, just thinking positively about Him. Right? Now, it seems like that just goes without saying that everyone thinks positively about God, but it's not. I've seen many, many people speak in a way that they think God has it out for them, like God is trying to harm them in some way. That God is being unfair to them in this world because of the difficulties that they're facing and the hardship that they're facing. So a lot of people have a negative outlook on God. They're pessimistic when it comes to God. Right? They're not looking at Him as the source of all that's good in their life. They're blaming Him for all the negativity in their life. They might not say that with their tongue, but the way that they're describing the situation that they're in, that's what it's showing. Right? So having this positive outlook on God, on Allah, is a form of worship. Right? There's heavy encouragement there. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, husna dhan billah an la tarju illa Allah wa la takhafa illa dhanba. Right? So thinking positively about God is what? It's that you don't have any hope except for with God, and you don't have any fear except from your own sins. Right? And that's what husna dhan billah is. So husna dhan of God. So here we talked about a few different types of optimism. Right? There's three main types. First one is in regards to Allah. in regards to God. So it's thinking positively about God, right? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, I swear by Allah, who is the only one worthy of being worshipped, that no believer will get anything good from this world or the next except by thinking positively about God, by having a positive outlook about Allah. Right? So this husn dhan is a source of blessings for us. Right? Then you have optimism about the world. So you're looking at the universe, the world, the creation of God, right? And you're saying that it's the best possible creation, and everything is running its course, everything is going as it should be going, right? That's having a positive outlook on the universe. And if you look into our books of theology, this type of positive outlook is how the word justice is defined, right? Justice in our books of theology is defined as everything running the course as it's supposed to run. Everything is moving in the direction it's supposed to move in, which is interesting, right? That's having that understanding of the universe is what's described as husn dhan in the world. And finally, husn dhan about other people, and this is huge. This is where our community fails big time, right? But having this positive outlook about others, other believers, is very, very important, right? Imagine if we had that in our community, we all thought the best of each other. Now, obviously, if you take it too far, then you're gullible and you could be taken advantage of. I'm not saying that. But we're way on the other side of different. So if we move closer towards the middle, right, and we have a better outlook about our brothers and sisters, we think positively about each other, that in and of itself would solve so many problems we're having in the community, right? A lot of problems come from judging people quickly, right? I saw this person in such and such place, or this person wears such and such clothes, or looks in such and such a manner, whatever. One very quick observation, we judge their entire life and we decide whether they're a good person or a bad person almost immediately. Right? This is bad. This causes a lot of problems, a lot of difficulties, right? Another one is the same story that happened with the Prophet, where gossip flies through the community, right? If someone does something, like I'll give one example. I was watching someone showed me a news story of one of the brothers that I know who got arrested, right? So he was on the news getting arrested by the cops. So you would say, wow, what a bad person, right? Look at this person, he's bad. It's on TV. And then everyone I knew was talking bad about this person. No one stopped for a moment to think, what if he's innocent? What if he didn't do the crime he's suspected of, right? They didn't take him to court, they haven't convicted him, they just arrested him. Everyone's should be assumed as innocent until proven guilty, something like that they say, right? But immediately we run to judgment. And then everyone's talking bad not only about him, about his family, about his friends, and everyone now is bad. Right? It's very quick to judge. Now, who knows the reality of the situation? But I haven't investigated. I shouldn't jump to conclusions. I should try to look into it. Right? Having this positive outlook about others leads to stopping and thinking about the situation before judging too quickly. Right? And that's important. All right. And there's a verse of Quran that supports this as well. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ijtanabu kathiran min adhan Inna ba'da dhan ithmun wala tajassasu. So, O you who believe, right, stay away from the majority of dhan. So the majority of this negative opinions about others here in this case, thinking negatively about others, stay away from it in most cases. It doesn't say in all cases, because remember, we can't be too gullible either. But in most cases, stay away from it, right? And even some of these outlooks that you have, some of these negative outlooks that you have on others are sin. Right? And then he says, Allah says, don't spy on each other as well. So don't try to find faults with each other as well. All right, let me take a second and look at these questions. And ask your questions, please. All right. I shouldn't have touched this. I touched this and it got messed up. All right, first question. Can we say that even if someone committed a sin, it's between them and God, and we should not speak of that to others? Yes, we can say that, right? So there's two types of gossip, right? First type of gossip is ghaiba, right? It's when someone did something wrong in private or other people don't know about it, and then we go run and tell people about it, right? That gossiping is a sin. It's haram to do that. And this person actually did that. So yes, we're not supposed to go and, tell other people, hey, I saw so-and-so commit this sin, right? That's definitely something we should not be doing. The second one is even worse than that, which is called slander, which is the person didn't commit that sin, right? And we're lying and we're inventing a sin for him and then telling people, right? So we're lying, right, about the person in order to destroy his reputation. So that's even worse. But if the person did it, still, no, we're not supposed to. There are exceptions. So the exceptions would be if someone's trying to get married, and we know that the person they're marrying has these negative qualities, then we're supposed to tell them. Or if someone's entering into a business partnership with that person, and is doing some form of business, and we know that the person is not trustworthy, then we're supposed to tell them. Right? So there are exceptions, but for the most part, no, we're not supposed to. Yeah?
What if in that situation you mentioned with the business, what if what you say is based on, say, hearsay, but it might not be true, and it might prevent that partnership from happening, but it might...
Yeah, so the exception, we have to be certain of the exception. Right? So if we're not sure, if we think, hey, I've heard some gossip, or maybe this, like if we're not certain that the person is untrustworthy, or committed some kind of sin that would affect his business, thank you, then no, we can't say anything. All right, next question. How can someone with difficulties in life think positively about the world? What else should they consider to think positively about God and the world? Nice. That's a good question. Inshallah, we'll get to it in a little bit about how to change our perspective from a pessimistic worldview to an optimistic worldview. All right, so inshallah, that's part of our discussion tonight. But that is a good question. And it's interesting because look, there's a pretty famous psychologist by the name of Martin Seligman. He says that life inflicts the same setbacks and tragedies, basically the same hardship, right, on the optimist as it does on the pessimist. The only difference is that the optimist weathers them better, right? He's able to deal with the life difficulties and hardship that he faces in a better way. So saying that, a person experiences hardship, and because of this hardship, they cannot think positively about the world, right, might not be a true statement. All right, next one. Some have argued that God plays with his creation by favoring some people at one point in time and others at a different point, which is why many different nations have prevailed and conquered each other across history. How does one best address this argument? Yeah. So that is interesting. Definitely, I'm not 100% in disagreement with this argument. I do think that there are certain nations that are favored. So I think the Muslims are favored over non-Muslims, and people who are born in a Muslim family have an advantage. There are people who are born into poverty and in places where there is very little opportunity for growth, and there's people who are born with every opportunity at their fingertips. So it's true that people are born in different situations, and some people are favored if you want to use that word, in this materialistic and sometimes spiritual way. In addition to that, some people have stronger intellects than others. Some people are born smarter, right? Some people are born geniuses. I was doing an intelligence test with the kid in year 5, I believe. And he was solving math problems that were stumping the year 12s, right? And he was doing them with ease. He scored off the charts in every category, and it was like one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. Right? He was answering, like, there's a test that they throw questions at you, and he was answering questions. I don't even know how to read what the question, I don't even understand what the question means, and he was answering it. Right? You have people who are just born intellectually superior to others. Right? So God is favoring them with a stronger intellect. You have people that are born with more propensity towards spirituality than other people. Right? So, how do we combat that? The only way that I could make sense of that is saying that yes, people are born on different levels, with different strengths, with different weaknesses, and Allah expects more from the people who are born with more gifts than those who aren't. So the ones who Allah gives a stronger intellect to, there's more responsibility. The ones that God gives a higher propensity towards spirituality to, there's more, Allah would want more out of them, spiritually speaking. Right? The one who's born in wealth and with opportunity, there's more responsibility there. What's he going to do with this wealth? Is he going to spend it all for himself and hoard it? Is he going to help those who are in need? Right? Every position that we're in has responsibility towards it. So it's an interesting question on a theological perspective, and hopefully that addresses it. All right, back to husn zan. So back to optimism. What are the outcomes? If one adopts an optimistic worldview, what advantages will this give him? There's a few of them. I'm going to mention 3. First one is an increase in spirituality, which is huge. How do I say that? That hadith from Imam Ali alayhi salam. Right? That first hadith, it said, Husnul dhan rahatul qalb. Right? Now, you might say that tranquility or comfort in the heart isn't, exactly spirituality, true, right? But a lot of times, the heart is mentioned as a vessel for spirituality and closeness to God, right? So it's possible that Imam Ali alayhi salam here is connecting to this. Some of our scholars of Irfan and Islamic spirituality also mention that husn dhan is connected to what they call the station of Muhiba, or the station of love. Right? So when you have husn dhan of God, right, when you think positively about Allah, that increases the love you have of God, which makes sense. If one always thinks that God is, has his best interests at heart, and that God wants the best for him, and that God is always treating him in the best possible way, then the outcome of that would be is you would love Allah more. Right? Your opinion of God would obviously be favorable. Right? Now, when you increase your husn dhan of other people, same thing. Right? If there's someone that looks at you in a positive way, that helps you build a relationship with them. You like this person. You don't like someone who looks down upon you and thinks negatively about you. You like someone who thinks positive, like who thinks that you're important, right? Thinks that you're an amazing person, right? When you have that type of relationship, right, that grows. And then if you reciprocate it and you think the same of them, then this relationship would flourish, right? This love between people grows through husn dhan, which is interesting. All right. Second one is improved health. right? And again, Imam Ali alayhi salam mentioned that in that hadith. He said, "Husn dhan rahatul qalb wa salamatul badan." Right? So it gives the body health. Right? Which is interesting. Now, what does optimism have with, what's the relationship between optimism and health? That one could be argued, right? But a relationship existing, at least scripturally, we could use the words of Imam Ali alayhi salam to accept it. Now, research has also found a correlation between people with an optimistic worldview and longevity, right? So they have longer lifespan, right? And then they try to explain it. They theorize, why is this the case? They don't know. It's a correlation. It's not causation. They don't know why, but they theorize. And one of the theories that they give is that people who have an optimistic outlook on the world also would have an optimistic outlook on their own health. When some kind of ailment or pain or disease or sickness comes, they'll try to take care of it. They'll have an optimistic view of doctors, they'll have an optimistic view of the medical profession, and they'll go and they'll try to, solve whatever problem that they're facing. Whereas someone who's pessimistic about everything will have a pessimistic view about doctors and hospitals and everything, and will run away from getting the care that they need. This is one theory. I'm not saying that this is why, but it's a theory. All right. Yes. So the question is correct. If you're overly optimistic, you can be taken advantage of. That is true. So everything has to have a balance, right? But having a positive outlook on others, if it's balanced, will not lead you to be taken advantage of. All right. Next one. Third outcome. So first outcome, increased spirituality. Second outcome, improved health. Third outcome is increased motivation, right, in general. So plenty of studies have been done which show that an optimistic worldview leads to intrinsic motivation at work, or at least is correlated with intrinsic motivation at work, which is the highest level of motivation. It's correlated to increased well-being at work. It's correlated to higher grades at uni. In many different fields, there's correlations between an optimistic worldview and success. Right? So they link that to more motivation. So when you have an optimistic worldview, or an optimistic perspective of your work or your university or whatever, you are more motivated to take part and work well. Right? Again, that's the theory. It's a correlation, but it's an interesting one. Right? So now the question comes as, can we adopt an optimistic point of view? Because maybe we don't have one right now. Maybe we're very pessimistic. Maybe we look negatively upon everything. Right? Many people are that way. Right? Many people are optimistic, many people are pessimistic. I'm sure when you think about it, you know many people who are on both sides of the coin. Right? So when we look at ourselves, if I'm not an optimistic person, can I become one? Is this something I could change about myself? Or is pessimism and optimism a personality trait that's ingrained within us that can't be changed? Right? It's a big question. Now, there's a whole field of study recently that has come that's called learned optimism, which means, by definition, that you can learn it, that you can adopt an optimistic worldview. And there's a book called Learned Optimism, if you want to look at it. Pretty good book. Now, how can we do this? So, I'll look at one hadith from Imam Ali alayhi salam to give one opinion, right? And then a few others which are a little bit more connected to psychology and that book, Learned Optimism. So the one with Imam Ali alayhi salam is interesting. Right? I think it's very interesting. He says, whoever's worship is righteous. Right? His dhan will be righteous. So basically, whoever worships Allah correctly will adopt an optimistic opinion about God, about the universe, and about people. Which is amazing. But then you look at it, there's plenty of people who worship Allah who are pessimistic. And we can't discuss the quality of their worship, that's not what I'm doing. But we could look at ourselves. And there's always room for improvement. So I think the way that we could take this hadith is that Imam Ali alayhi salam is asking us to look within, look internally, look at our worship. Can our worship be defined as righteous? And by righteous, we don't mean amount, right? We don't mean quantity, we mean quality. So is our prayer a righteous prayer? When we fast in the month of Ramadan, is our fast righteous? Right? Are we worshiping how we should be worshiping? Right? The closer we get to that ideal worship, quality-wise, not quantity, the closer we'll be here. So Imam Ali alayhi salam is saying that the way we worship God affects the way we look at God. And that has to be reciprocal. Because the way we look at God should affect our worship too. Right? If we have this positive outlook on God, our worship should improve. And then when our worship improves, he's saying that our perspective on God will improve as well. And then that should make our worship improve more. So it should keep going back and forth, leading us towards him, inshallah, very quickly. Right? So it's a very interesting hadith when you think about it. There's other ways though. So the other way of trying to adopt optimism is trying to combat pessimism. Right? So it's trying to rid ourselves of pessimistic thoughts in order to adopt optimistic thoughts. Now how do we do that? So the first thing that we're taught is to try to find the cause of these pessimistic thoughts. Where do they come from? Right? Sometimes they could come from just the way that we process information. So when someone says a glass is half empty, and another person says a glass is half full, right? That's just the way that they're processing information. So some people automatically process information negatively, and some people automatically process information positively. So you have to look and see which side you fall. Another one is what they call locus of control. And what that means is the confidence, the amount of confidence you have that you have the ability to change the situation you're in. Right? So can I take an active role in changing or in influencing the exam marks I have at uni? Right? If I study and if I prepare myself, will my exam marks be higher? Right? Do I have control over this? Do I have control over my performance at work? If I, get a good night's sleep and I concentrate and I prepare myself and I, obtain the skills that are necessary for the profession I'm in, can I positively influence my work performance? So some people say no, it's not on me, it's completely external things. And some people say yes, I have the ability to influence these matters. Right? So again, depending where you're at. Then they say you should be fighting some common what they call cognitive distortions. Right? And I'll mention 3 of them. One of them is personalization. So a pessimist, someone who has a pessimistic worldview, states that when something bad happens to them, it's because of them. Right? Where an optimist says it's because of something external to them. So for example, someone fails a test, it's because I'm stupid. I'm not intelligent, and that's why I failed this test. right? It's not because, you know, my parents invited my uncles over last night and they didn't let me sleep and I wasn't ready to take the test anymore, right? It's not because of that, it's because I have some intellectual disability, right? So that's, the pessimistic thought is something's wrong with me. Optimist is, you know, something in my situation didn't allow me to take the test right. I didn't get a good night's sleep. I wasn't able to study correctly, whatever it was. And this led me to not getting a good night. So you can see a difference.
I mean, that kind of, I mean, you can sort of make an argument that say it kind of sounds like you're making an excuse for something.
True, like the optimist is making an excuse that I failed because I wasn't prepared. Yeah, so you're right. It could be an excuse if it's not true, right? The optimist says that he has the ability to influence his exam mark. So he believes that he is smart enough, doesn't mean he's the smartest person in the world, but he's capable of passing this exam. And if he prepared himself correctly, he would pass it. So if he didn't pass it, that means either he didn't prepare himself correctly, so then he'll be finding out ways why, or, you know, the exam marker cheated him or something. Right? There'll be some excuse external. The excuse, like the reason would never be, I'm stupid. Right? There's a problem with me. Right? There's got to be some other problem somewhere. Right? That's, I guess you could say it's an excuse in some cases, right? But if you're looking honestly at yourself, right? When you look honestly into yourself and you say that, no, like, I didn't pass this test because I didn't put enough effort in it, that's why I didn't pass it, right? Or I didn't pass it because I'm not able to understand this, like, I will never be able to pass this test no matter how much I study, because I'm just not smart enough. It's two different ways, yeah? All right, second one is go ahead.
What if someone is actually, because there are some people that are actually unable, like they are actually defined as, I don't want to say, you know, stupid, because there are some people who, no matter how hard they try, they might not succeed at something.
True, there's some people who have intellectual disabilities and are unable to pass very, you know, complex questions on a test, right? That's true. But still, it would be up to them to determine between them and God where they sit on this, right? And if there's someone who can't pass it because of their intellectual disability, maybe they own it, right? And they don't consider themselves at a disadvantage.
Like they would say, I've tried my best, therefore I spent my.
But it's true. There are, you know, extreme cases. The norm, though, is not that. Right? All right. Another one would be pervasiveness. So the second one, which is they all start with P's, so they're easy to remember. Second one is pervasiveness, which means that this negative event is kind of forever, right? It's pervasive. It's global. It's huge, right? So for instance, I did a bad job, right? I did a terrible job at my previous employment, and I got fired, right? So I just didn't perform well, and they fired me, and that means I'll never get a job again in my life, right? I'm not good at this profession, and I will never be right. Or I failed an exam, which means I will never pass another exam in my life, so there's no point in studying anymore, right? So it's taking everything to the extreme, right? And a pessimist does that. So they look at one example, and then that example becomes their entire life. So I had one bad relationship, and that means all my future relationships will be negative. I had one negative experience with a friend, and that means all of my friends are terrible too. And I'll never have a good friend, or I'll never be a good friend. Right? So one example leads to this like forever type of mentality. Third one is permanence, right? So this negative trait is unchangeable. Right? So I didn't pass the test because I'm stupid, and I'm always going to be stupid, and there's nothing I could do about it. Right? I'll never be able to change that. I'll never be able to study and improve myself intellectually. Right? So these are pessimistic points of view. So what are we talking about? The way to adopt optimism is to try to identify whether or not you have any of these thought patterns. And if you have these thought patterns, we try to challenge them. Right? So myself, for instance, I'll give an example. So I used to translate a lot of books and articles and things like that. And one time, while I was translating, another person from, this was when I was in Iran, so another person from the West read my translation and had some negative comments about it to one of the one of the bosses there that worked in the organization that I was translating. And when I heard that, it really affected me. I thought, wow, like my English must be terrible. And when I went to home, I didn't have an education, a real education, so I barely passed high school in the States, barely. And then I didn't go to university or anything before I went to Hausa. And then I went to Hausa, so I thought, yeah, it makes sense. My English isn't that great. I don't have any academic experience with English, right? So I believed it. And I said, I must not be a good translator. So it made me stop translating for a long period of time. And it made me really think that I'll have problems with writing and with English. So I thought that. Then I came here to Australia, and I went to uni. And in uni, I had to write a bunch of essays. And I always got really good marks on my essays. And I said, maybe my writing's not that bad, right? At the beginning, I said, man, I'm going to look dumb, this essay I'm writing, everyone's I'm going to get a bad mark because I don't know English well. And then I got a good grade. So that changed my perspective, right? I had a pessimistic view of myself. I was able to change it. And now, I still don't think I have the best English in the world, but I think my English is good enough for the profession I'm in, right? And that's changing the way that I looked. I let someone else from a negative comment really affect me, and it had an effect on my work because I stopped translating, right? So I stopped translating for a long period of time because of those comments. So those comments really did affect me. And then when I was able to take a step back and look at it for what it was, I said, wait a second, this person, those comments that he made, he was talking about certain translation styles, and I disagree with what he's saying. I don't even agree with his perspective, let alone his criticism of my work. Not saying my work was great, but his critique was invalid. Maybe a different critique would be valid, but his was invalid. But even with that, I let it affect me until I really took a step back and looked at it, right? And then I was able to improve. So that being said, that's just one example of how you could change your perspective and your outlook on yourself, let alone others, right? So we went over a story in the Quran where Allah is rebuking people for not having this positive outlook on others, right? Then we went over a number of hadith where our Ma'asumeen alayhim salam are encouraging us to have positive views about Allah, about other people, and about the world. And then we looked at some of the benefits to that. That there's benefits for our spirituality, there's benefits for our health, and there's benefits for our success in this world. Right? So it's pretty much all around, it's good stuff if we're able to be optimistic. And then we tried to look at ways to, inshallah, adopt an optimistic worldview. So with those ones, it takes effort and time, but those are just the beginning points. Inshallah, if we want to discuss this further, we can on another night. But hopefully with that, it was interesting. It was for me reading about it here. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أحسنت.
Thank you very much, Sheikh, for that beautiful discussion. You're alone tonight. Hopefully you didn't get too tired. Allah bless you both in this life and the next. Please recite Allah Salawat for Sheikh's well-being.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
So the most important announcement for tonight is camp. It's coming up, so it's the week before Christmas. We're going on the 21st and returning on the 24th. So you'll be back in time for Christmas. There's 4 days to register. The price at the moment is $450, if I'm correct. So the early bird offer has expired, but you have 4 more days to register before registrations close altogether, and you can't bribe us into opening them again. Another announcement, tomorrow is the council election for Cumberland Council, so if anyone's in the area, now it matters because the approval for the development of the new centre is of course in the hands of Cumberland Council, so from what I hear, a vote to Ola Hamid will go a long way to helping us. So, the Labour Party, yeah. So if you are able to vote, please do so. That's it for tonight's program. Thank you all for coming out tonight. To end tonight's program, Brother Amir will recite the Faraj. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه